Greetings. Welcome all Tiger Bay members and Orange County Bar Association members. We are so proud to have our joint meeting that we tend to do every couple of years when there's an election of joint interest in common between our two fine organizations. And there is no better example of that than the race for state attorney for the 9th Judicial Circuit. This year, we have no fewer than 4 fantastic candidates, maybe 5. I don't know. I can't count. But regardless, we have a lot of interesting people for you to hear from, and you need to hear from them because this decision is important. The decisions that are made by the state attorney affect us all, as you'll hear throughout this debate. So Tiger Bay is very proud to join up with the Orange County Bar Association to conduct this. The Tiger Bay Club is a multi-partisan club. We are composed of Democrats, Republicans, Independents, all civic-minded people looking to do this, to get open communication, something that we truly need in these times, so that we can all find out how to best move our country and our government forward. So we are very proud to engage in that discussion with these candidates and with the Orange County Bar Association. And it is my sincere pleasure to introduce the brand newly installed, fantastic, amazing LaShonda Jackson, Orange County Bar Association President. Yay, LaShonda. LaShonda, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nick. On behalf of the Orange County Bar Association, I'd also like to welcome everybody in attendance today. We're delighted to host this event showcasing the candidates for the 9th Circuit State Attorney race. I would also like to take this time to thank our generous sponsor, and I want to add that these sponsors, or this particular sponsor and the sponsors that I will list later, are not sponsors of any individual candidates, but instead are sponsors of the Orange County Bar Association. Today's title sponsor is Orange Legal, a Veritex company, and I'm delighted to welcome Jimmy Singh, account executive, to say a few words.
Thank you, LaShonda, for that introduction. Just so you know, I miss you and I still owe you a hug. Thank you to the Orange County Bar Association and the Tiger Bay for the opportunity to sponsor today's, I believe, first virtual luncheon. I can't believe it's been a year since the last time I was standing up on the podium next to Tony Sos, and now here we all are sitting in our respective homes and offices. Some people may be in their pajamas. Hopefully everybody has pants on. Some coworkers are sleeping in their dog bed next to us. But I'm hoping that everything kind of goes back to normalcy, that way I could stand next to you, LaShonda, soon. As businessmen and women, we evolve. Since acquisition last year, Orange Legal as a company has evolved and was very much adapting to change. One of the things we learned during this evolvement and through the pandemic is the need for flexibility with our clients. As many of you know, there have been some Zoom hackings and such. And then with the ever-growing concern of cybersecurity, Orange Legal Veritex has taken an approach to provide secured virtual depositions and then provide those secured links on a more secured platform via our My Veritex portal. Some clienteles prefer the portal method, but with flexibility and adapting, others don't, which is also perfectly fine. The virtual links that are sent out for your virtual depositions are all embedded with password coding. So we ensure to become more flexible to meet everyone's wants and needs when it comes to a court reporting agency. With change and adaptability, there have been some hiccups as we perfect perfection. I would like to personally say how much I truly do appreciate our business partnerships with all of you and your patience as we continue to streamline our services through the pandemic. Court reporting, legal videography, process services, and exhibit sharing, all of our resources, they're learning and adapting to the change as we all are. As many of you know me on a personal level, I encourage all of those who don't know me to kind of reach out to those who do. I say that just because I would love the opportunity to get to know everyone, but also I would love to evolve as a person myself, and I would love that personal feedback as to kind of how I'm doing in the local market kind of deal. And also I want you all to know, as a local representative, like, I'm here for your litigation needs. Kim Hochstetler is a colleague of mine, and she also helps with the local market. We're both here for you. The flyer that was sent out on your Zoom link for today has my direct contact information as well as Kim. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you again, everyone, for your time and your consideration. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope we all can get together again soon.
Thank you, Jimmy, and to Orange Legal and Veritex Company for your continued support of the Orange County Bar Association. Due to the special nature of this particular meeting, we are not going to have any announcements on behalf of the Orange County Bar Association, other than to recognize our other sponsors, which include Florida Loyals Mutual Insurance Company, Seacoast Bank, LexisNexis, the Tyson Smith Group of Raymond James, Special Counsel, and University Property and Casualty Insurance Company. We thank them for their continued support of our organization throughout the pandemic and beyond. I will now go over a little bit of information to our candidates about today's debate parameters, and then we will proceed with introductions. The candidates, we were joking a little bit earlier before we came on about adhering to timelines. But I just want you to know that we do have specific parameters in place. The moderator will ask questions of the candidates. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question. 2 minutes. 2 minutes and 2 minutes only. Our timekeeper, Nick Shaneen, and he won't do it with a haiku because that might take too long, but he is going to be timing the responses. And we do reserve the right to use the Zoom mute feature for those who will not adhere to the rules with sticking with 2 minutes per question. Excuse me, I'm sorry, is it 2 minutes or 1 minute, Nick? I don't want to.
1 minute for the questions, 2 minutes for their opening statements. And if there's any special moderator, I need you to respond to some things, those are 30 seconds.
Okay, sorry about that. My notes are wrong on there. So 1 minute to answer the individual questions, and then we'll give you 2 minutes at the end for a final, your 2 minute elevator pitch. With that being said, again, we're gonna try to be fair. We're gonna ask the questions and try to rotate the questions among the candidates so that we give every candidate an opportunity to speak on a particular area. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's debate, Jasmine Bailey, Emmy Award-winning news anchor for West 2 News Sunrise. Since 2013, Jasmine has greeted Central Florida TV viewers with her bright smile and the day's top headlines. Jasmine is also a proud graduate of Michigan State University's School of Journalism. Without further ado, Jasmine Bailey.
Afternoon to all of you. I want to first say thank you to the Orange County Bar Association and also Tiger Bay of Central Florida for having me. It is my pleasure to be here, and hopefully I look bright-eyed. I've been up since about 2 this morning, which is insane, but yeah, I'm happy. I'm very happy to be here. So let's get to it, because I know we have a little bit of time to spend with each other. The first thing that we're going to do is start off with each candidate having a moment to tell us why you are seeking to be the next state attorney of Orange and Osceola counties. And again, 2 minutes to start, and we'll begin with Ms. Barr.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for having me today. I'm running for state attorney because I believe we can do better. I have been a prosecutor in Orange and Osceola counties for the past 17 years. And as a prosecutor, I have done every type of case from misdemeanors to the death penalty. And in addition to my trial work, where I've successfully received outcomes at trial over 100 times, I am a manager. I have been a manager under 3 different elected state attorneys. And if you're familiar with who the state attorneys have been in Orange and Osceola County, if you could say that we had 3 polar opposites, I think we've had 3 polar opposites. And you know, the one thing that I believe they have in common is me. All 3 elected state attorneys believed that I was a leader in the office and made me part of their management team. I started my career under Lawson Lamar, who's endorsing me in this race. I worked for him for over 10 years, and he made me a manager, my first management position, as in charge of all the sex crimes for Orange and Osceola County. I was the youngest manager by about 10 years when he made me into that position. And then Jeff Ashton came in and I prosecuted homicides, and I also managed a 5th of his downtown office. And then Ms. Ayala came in and now I manage the day-to-day operations of the office. So I've had a front row seat in terms of what works, what doesn't work, and what we can do better. And I'm ready to take all of my knowledge, my experience, and implement my policies, because I've been implementing the policies of others for 17 years. I am ready to do this, but I need your help. Please vote for me. And in 15 seconds, vote for me on or before August 18th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Perry.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Belvin Perry, and I'm running for state attorney to restore the trust, competency, and provide leadership to the office of the state attorney. My campaign has been endorsed by several respected community leaders: Congresswoman Val Demings, Mayor Jerry Demings, Mayor Buddy Dyer, Jose Alvarez from Kissimmee, Brian Nelson, Rusty Johnson, former Mayor Linda Chapin, Commissioner Vivian Janner and Cheryl Grieve of Osceola County, and former Commissioner Mabel Butler. I have served as the chief judge of this circuit for 18 of the 25 years that I was on the bench. I presided over a case that some of you may know of, is the case of the state of Florida versus Case Anthony. I have chaired the Florida Conference of Circuit Court Judges. I was appointed by the Supreme Court's Chief Justice to head up the Florida Innocence Commission. My proven leadership abilities, my proven work shows that I am ready to lead the state attorney's office. I've also served as an assistant state attorney, rose through the ranks to become chief assistant, where I ran the day-to-day operations of the state attorney's office. I have a proven track record that delivers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Torella.
Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being there. A special thanks to the elected officials watching and our judiciary members, all the judges watching. My respects, and I thank you for listening to us. The reason I'm running for state attorney is because I'm the candidate that believes that the office of the state attorney is not the place to bring social agendas nor political agendas. It is the office where you prosecute citizens that violate our criminal laws. And when you do that, you also seek sentences, and I say seek because ultimately the courts are responsible for sentencing. Seek sentences that are appropriate to the actions of the defendant, the prior history, and the impact on the community. I'm still believing the good old saying that says, do the crime, do the time. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I've been living in Orlando for 32 years, practicing law 31, 3 as a state attorney and 28 as defense attorney. I ran my own firm for 28 years in this community. What I can tell you is that when I first started practicing in Orlando, Florida, in Kissimmee, when people committed crimes, first time they would get a break, second time, still a bit break, and on the third time, there were consequences. The second or third time you did something, there were consequences. For the past 10 years, the office of the state attorney's office has been declining, deteriorating exponentially. And if you choose the wrong state attorney, the next time, Orlando is going to become like New York, Orlando is going to become like Seattle. I believe in old school, traditional state attorney's office.
Mr. Torella, we're going to have to ask you to stop.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
Yes, ma'am. So my name is Ryan Williams. I'm a lifetime resident of Central Florida. I graduated from a local high school, went to Rollins College, and then the University of North Carolina School of Law at Chapel Hill. I'm a career prosecutor, and I'm proud of that fact. So I'm running for state attorney because I believe in justice for victims and safeguarding the rights of the accused. And I believe we shouldn't have to choose between doing those two important things. I think my career shows that you can aggressively prosecute crime while also being compassionate and recognizing that many people in a criminal justice system deserve a second chance. So I've spent most of my adult life prosecuting cases and working for victims here in the Ninth Judicial Circuit. My next trial will be the 168th of my career, and I've spent the last 5 years on cases that have shocked the conscience of this community, names like Okafor, St. Simon, Miller, and Lloyd. And I've prosecuted police officers and those who have murdered them. So despite those responsibilities, it's been my privilege to serve this community as a member of the Orange County Bar Association. I'm entering my 7th year as a member of the OCBA's Executive Council, and I've co-chaired or chaired multiple committees within the bar. I'm also the first and only prosecutor to win the Lawrence G. Matthews Jr. Young Lawyer Professionalism Award, or to my knowledge, any professionalism award that's been given by this organization to a prosecutor. I work in one and support both of the sponsoring organizations today because they're comprised of members of this community who work to make Orange County a better place to live, and by using the education and the gifts that we've all been given throughout our practices in law. And I look forward to talking about my candidacy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Ms. Worrell.
Good afternoon. My name is Monique Worrell, and I am a career criminal justice reform advocate. I began my career in this community 20 years ago as a public defender, and then went out into private practice before becoming a professor at University of Florida College of Law, where I trained many of the criminal law practitioners across the state and some throughout the country. After 17 years of working in both private practice as well as a professor, I left University of Florida. I was then the director of the Criminal Justice Center and became the founding director of the Conviction Integrity Unit at the State Attorney's Office, where I led the investigation of wrongful convictions. I then went on to become the chief legal officer of Reform Alliance, a national nonprofit organization where I advocated for probation and parole reform. In my years of practice, I have mourned with family members who have lost their loved ones to mass incarceration, and also stood with victims who are frustrated by a system that is more focused on vengeance than it is on restoration. I have also stood with law enforcement officers who, like me, joined this profession because they want to protect and serve their communities. And even if that means protecting their communities is against other law enforcement officers. My experience shows that I am the only candidate in this race who is a career criminal justice reform advocate. And criminal justice reform is something that we need in our community now more than ever. I have been endorsed by local Commissioner Bakari Burns, Representative Anna Eskamani, Commissioners George Oliver and Larry Brinson, retired Judge Morris Smith, as well as United States Senator Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, and Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, because criminal justice reform is a national issue.
Thank you. So candidates, we've heard you talk a little bit about your careers in some detail. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but we also want to have an opportunity just to get to know you while we're on this call today. So our next question is, tell us something about you that no one knows. Mr. Williams, you can begin.
Oh, you would start with me, something about you that no one knows. I don't know that I know anything that no one knows. I guess what I would say, though, is what a lot of people don't know, and it's relevant to this conversation, is that I am the son of a convicted felon. And my father is in prison and is actually set to be released in January of this coming year. And that situation has had a pretty profound impact on my life. He was incarcerated while I was pretty young at the state attorney's office for a crime that he committed and deserved to be incarcerated for. But his incarceration destroyed my family, and I've had to watch my mom and my sister deal with that situation. And the reason I bring it up is because it is rare that I try a case where I don't look at the other side of the courtroom after a verdict comes back, because I truly understand what it is to be on the other side of the courtroom. And I think that is an important perspective to have when you're dealing with some of the most violent people in the community, victims and the loved ones of defendants.
Thank you. Ms. Worrell.
Well, I can't say that no one knows, because over the last 4 months, I've talked about it repeatedly, but I think relevant. I became a criminal justice reform advocate at the age of 9 years old when my brother, who is a veteran of the United States Air Force, I first learned of his involvement in the legal system. He had been diagnosed with PTSD and bipolar disorder, and as a result of the medication that he was prescribed, he developed an addiction that later led to him being in and out of the criminal legal system for my entire life. And at the age of 9, I knew that it was wrong for us to treat someone who was addicted and suffering from mental illness that way, and that incarceration could not resolve those issues, and that we had to do something different, and we needed to treat people better. And that's why I became a criminal justice reform advocate.
Mr. Perry, what's something people don't know about you?
It's kind of hard to say, but let me say this. I'm the individual that has a servant's heart. I can remember one day being at Chick-fil-A and being told a story about Deputy Scott Pine and his tragic death, and how I led the movement and drafted legislation to be able to get his wife and other first responders pensions for those individuals that were killed in the line of duty. I have always dedicated my time, talent for the betterment of this community, from mentoring students at Jones High School, from working on the board of trustees at Bethune-Cookman University, at Florida A&M University, from running errands in my community for senior citizens. I'm the type of person that people will come to my home, call me up in the middle of the night for advice. I just have a servant's heart. That's the way I was raised by my parents. My dad was one of 2 police officers that first served in Orlando. Thank you.
Ms. Barra.
Yeah, so something people don't know about me is I was punched by a kangaroo. I was in Australia, I was on a golf course, and I was, talking to a kangaroo, which I'm not crazy. I knew he wasn't gonna talk back. But what I didn't expect is that he was just really gonna and punch me. I didn't punch back, although it would have been self-defense, and I could have, but I chose not to. So that's something pretty random. What I think, pertaining to this election, I think a lot of people don't know, a lot of people do, but a lot of people don't know that I'm openly gay. And as state attorney, I will be the first openly gay state attorney in the state of Florida. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Torella.
Well, many people don't know that I have a master's in business administration from the American Grad School of International Management, also known as Thunderbird School. When I graduated, that was the #1 international business school in the world. I could list you 1,000 names, but 3 people come to mind: the current CEO of PepsiCo for the whole world, the former CEO of British Petroleum, current VP worldwide for Coca-Cola marketing. All those guys I went to school with. After I worked for R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company, I was a brand manager for Winston cigarettes. We managed revenues of almost $2 billion. I'm talking $1980. An advertising budget of $600 million. I was trained by top businessmen in this country. Then I went to law school in Boston, Massachusetts, in Suffolk University, and then moved to Orlando. I have 2 beautiful young adults children. My son attends Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. He's going to be a junior. And my daughter attends
Thank you,
JU
Mr.
in
Torello.
Jacksonville. Thank you.
Thank you. Since we have already started talking about careers here, I wanted to think back about the course of your careers that you've worked. What case had the most impact on you? And we also want to know why. Let's begin with Ms. Barra.
There's been a ton. I think every case has an impact on me, but if I had to pick one, it was a sex crimes case involving a minor. It was a child. She was 8 years old when she took the witness stand. Because a lot of people, you know, criminal law, you have to call the person who's accusing the individual. So you have to call children to the witness stand. And what struck me about this little kid was that she had been suffering from sexual abuse from her father for years and years and years. And she's in the courtroom with her dad, and she took the witness stand and just destroyed him. I mean, it was incredible just to watch and to be a part of that process. And when she got off the witness stand, she turned to the jurors and she said, it was very nice meeting all of you, and kept walking out of the courtroom. And I was just like, okay, let's just vote right now, because she was amazing. So for her and all victims of sexual abuse, you inspire me every day. Thank you.
Mr. Perry?
I guess the most impactful case that I had, it was not the case of the state of Florida versus Casey Anthony, but it was a case that I did when I was in the probate division, dealing with the sterilization of a 12-year-old child. At the conclusion of hearing all of the testimony, even the testimony of the parents and the guardian ad litem, there was not a dry eye in the courtroom, including me. It was probably one of the most difficult and gut-wrenching decisions I ever had to make that will affect that young lady. And that case set the tone that a judge must listen, carefully analyze, and make a decision that can affect not only that particular person, but affect a number of people for the rest of their lives. So to me, that case stands out to me.
Mr. Williams?
I have to say the murder of two Kissimmee Police Department officers, Matthew Baxter and Sam Howard, in the city of Kissimmee in August of 2017. Everett Miller has been convicted of killing the two officers, and I remember distinctly going, they were killed on a Friday night, and I remember going to the Kissimmee Police Department office on Monday morning and walking in, and I had had the weekend to digest and sort of figure out what was up, but I was very focused on making sure that we had what we needed, and I didn't want to let anyone down, and I knew the significance of the case. And I was pretty much all business when we got there, and we met with detectives and officers for about 90 minutes, and then I left, and I turned around and I saw one of the officers crying, and I realized that they were investigating the murder of their friends. And it reminded me, and continues to remind me, of the impact of crimes and what we do on a daily basis. And that has always stuck with me, and I think it always will.
Ms. Ruel?
You know, the first case that came to my mind when you asked the question was the case of an individual that I represented who was charged with battery on a law enforcement officer after being brutalized by the Orlando Police Department. When I got his case and I began, reading the police statements, I had not yet seen his booking photos. And certainly by reading the statements, it appeared as though my client had, really conducted himself in a manner that was violent. However, when I saw his booking photos and I saw that his eye was swollen shut, that he had lacerations across his face, his lip was torn in half, and then we actually took this case to trial, because the charges were filed by the state attorney's office. And when I asked the officers what did the battery result in for them, and they said that they had no injuries, it really impressed upon me the reality of the harms and the impact of brutality against our community. So that was a case that really impacted me greatly.
Thank you. Mr. Torella.
As you know, I've been a defense attorney for 28 years. So whenever I go to trial, and if a client goes to prison or jail, I feel it. You know, I'm their lawyer. The one that comes to mind is I did a murder punishable by life and aggravated child abuse in Highlands County about 8-9 years ago. And it's a baby chicken syndrome case. And it had, in Hillsborough County and Highlands County, both counties were involved because the hospitals and law enforcement from both counties were involved. And I saw a young man, my client, who was 25. We got him not guilty on the murder charges, but he was found guilty on aggravated child abuse. And seeing him going to prison at a young age hurt me. He probably won't be out. He's probably out. Won't be out. He's going to be out in about 4 or 5 years more. He'll be about 40 years old. And that created an impact on me, and realizing how one evening and one accusations that you get from acts that you're accused of doing one day, one evening, can change a person's life forever.
Thank you.
And when that.
Thank you. This next question is actually from members of the host organizations for today's event. Is personal prosecutorial experience important for the position you are seeking to win, and why? Ms. Worrell, you can begin.
I don't believe it is, and here's why. I have been a criminal law practitioner for 20 years. I've tried close to 50 cases by jury. I've written motions and argued them. I have trained criminal law practitioners who have gone on to become defense attorneys as well as prosecutors. My decision to not be a line prosecutor was a personal one, and that was because I am not ideologically aligned with the current system of prosecution. And it is that same feeling that has led me to actually run for the seat, because I believe that rather than standing on the outside and criticizing how it's done, it's much more important to be on the inside and make the changes that are necessary in order to make our criminal legal system fair and just. Criminal justice reform is not a jacket that I just decided to try on because it's now something that's trendy, something that I've done all my life. And I would say that individuals who have not worked in the vein of criminal justice reform are not properly equipped to bring criminal justice reform to our system.
Mr. Williams?
I do think it's important. I don't necessarily think it's required, but I do think it is very helpful for a couple of reasons. You're leading, as the state attorney of the Ninth Circuit, more than 160 prosecutors that you're supposed to be guiding and setting the example for. And if you don't know the experiences that they have on a day-to-day basis, it's very difficult to be able to empathize and understand what they need and to be able to make sure that they have what they need. I strongly believe in leadership by example. I don't like it when people say, do as I do, or do as I say, not as I do. I think we need to be willing to do the things, or at least have done the things that we're asking people to do, particularly in a public service job where we all know that prosecutors will not and cannot be paid what they deserve. So my observation is that one of the ways to really inspire young lawyers to stay is to make sure that they are inspired and that they know that you're fighting for them and have the same shared experience that they do.
Mr. Torella?
I would take the role more of an administrator, of a coach, of a manager. I would want to know what's going on in the office, in all the departments of the office every day. What are the results that we are obtaining in the courtroom? I also want to be a motivator to the prosecutors and the support staff. The support staff, nobody talks about, they do an incredible job for the lawyers. So supporting them, telling them how we appreciate, how the community appreciates their work. I would try to get better pay for them. And that would be my role. I also like to inform the community what's going on. I'm thinking about a newsletter, a quarterly newsletter letter to inform the community what results we're getting in court, who's doing what in the community so that people are informed. And I see that as my main role. I also, being a defense attorney, and I will not tell you this, but I know the mistakes or the errors that the office makes and the prosecutors makes. But that's how we win cases. And I'm still a defense attorney, so I'm not gonna share that with you. But I will share it, if elected, I will share all those things with the prosecutors, so that when they present cases, they're more tight and ready to go.
Thank you, Mr. Torella. Mr. Perry.
I think leadership is very important. You can't lead where you've never been. When you have an office where you have somewhat of a door where people stay there from 2 to 4 years, it is very important that you have that experience, not only as a prosecutor trying cases, but running an office, being the politician that can go and get things done in Tallahassee, and knowing your community and being an innovator. Those are all things that are important and goes in that avenue of experience.
Ms. Barr?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. You have to be a prosecutor in order to lead prosecutors. To me, that's a no-brainer. I would equate that to, you know, if you hadn't had that experience, it would be basically like you watch some episodes of Grey's Anatomy and now you're ready to perform surgery. I mean, that's outrageous. Nobody would trust anybody to do that. So nobody should trust somebody to lead prosecutors when you've never been a prosecutor. You have to know what you're doing. We deal with people's lives every single day. Every single day you make decisions that changes people's lives. And you have to have the experience and the knowledge of a prosecutor in order to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Something that has kind of thrown a curveball to all of us is the pandemic, COVID-19, and certainly it has affected the criminal justice system. So in terms of moving along cases, it's kind of been a little difficult. What are your ideas to help address that issue, especially if jury trials don't resume by the end of the year? Mr. Perry, we'll begin with you.
Unfortunately, if jury trials don't resume, you're going to have to do a couple of things. Number one, you're going to have to look at your nonviolent offenses and try to get those diverted through diversionary programs. Some of those nonviolent offenses you're going to have to look at and see whether or not the arrest has actually cured the situation and that you don't need any additional prosecution. You also may have to do like they've done up in the Northern Federal District, and you may have to try a couple of these serious cases. They just had a trial a couple of weeks ago. So, but the biggest thing you're gonna have to do is get rid of your low-hanging nonviolent offenses and save all your resources to deal with your serious felony violent offenses.
Mr. Williams?
I knew I'd do it at some point. I agree with Judge Perry that the first thing is to identify all the cases that we can either dismiss, sentence diversion, or plea, and frankly, nonviolent offenses that we can plea for something that they might not otherwise plea for. If cases are still not going in January, were I to be elected, the other thing we would be doing is identifying the cases with speedy trial issues, making sure that those cases are worked on and done and ready, and being handled by prosecutors that, quite frankly, may be asked to go back to back to back as the court system tries to undig from this very serious backlog of cases. I do think there might come an opportunity where we have to innovate. I still think, based upon the number of people that are walking around on a daily basis, that there are people who are willing to serve as jurors in very serious cases where people's rights have been stalled for a very long time now. And I can foresee a situation where some cases where speedy hasn't been waived, that will happen. And we need to make sure as a state attorney's office that we're prepared to do that.
Ms. Morrell?
So disposing of the cases that are not necessary and at this point would just cause further backlog to the system by continuing to keep those cases going. Those would be your nonviolent offenses, your low-level offenses, offenses that there's no further disposition necessary. We can get rid of them. Making sure that individuals who are awaiting trial are not sitting in jail unnecessarily, that if there is a need for them to be bonded out, that they are bonded out, if there are some release conditions that are necessary to ensure that we maintain public safety, that we do that, and then being prepared to try the cases that need to be tried when the time resumes for us to do that. And I think that by getting rid of the backlog, by ensuring that people are not sitting in jail unnecessarily, and then being prepared to try the cases that are necessary, that's really all we can do under this very unprecedented circumstance.
Ms. Barra?
So the first thing we need to ensure is that people are safe, no matter what, and our employees are safe. And I'm really proud to say that in the steps that we've taken within the office, as far as PPE and making sure masks are worn all the time, we have had some positive cases, but it hasn't spread throughout the office. They've been isolated and limited because I think of the steps that we've been taking. So we always have to keep public safety and the safety of our employees as number one. The second thing is that we control what we can control. There's a lot to do at the state attorney's office. There is intake. We have cases coming in on a daily basis. There are depositions that we can focus on so that when we come out of this pandemic, and we will come out of this pandemic, we are going to be ready. We're going to be ready on the cases that need to be tried. And, I don't think that there's going to be thousands of cases that need trials. There's never that many trials. We need to focus on the ones that we can resolve, but people shouldn't get free passes for committing crime during a pandemic. I think people need to be held even more so accountable if they're taking advantage of a pandemic to create crime and commit it. Thank you.
Mr. Torella?
Well, I beg to differ with all my opponents. Since March of this year, when the pandemic started, our arrests have gone down 70%. Only 30% of the number of people that are generally arrested in Orange County are being arrested. So this, when elected officials cry and whine how busy they are and the backlog and all the work they have, nonsense. Arrests have decreased already by 70%. My opinion is all these folks are having a half-day vacation, and they've been having it for the last 4 months. So in the meantime, the community, do you think crime has stopped? Do you think drug dealers stopped selling drugs? Do you think people stopped getting beaten up? So I think law enforcement needs to continue doing their job as they usually do it. And right now, the Supreme Court also has told speedy trial. So there's no pandemic in the criminal justice system. There's a pandemic outside, but no pandemic in the criminal justice system. When arrests go down 70%, that's just it all. Please don't believe what these elected officials tell you. Okay, thank you.
I believe that actually might call for a response. Tiger Bay, Nick, you may be able to tell me. No? Yes? Uh-oh, he's muted.
You're muted, Nick.
I just pulled a Ryan Williams. Oh, man. That I would say they can probably integrate their response into the next question.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so just so everyone is clear, Mr. Torella, so we're going to stay with you. In terms of the pandemic creating issues, we certainly realized that we could do a lot of court hearings remotely. We're on Zoom right now using one of those tools, but what changes or improvements need to be made to incorporate that technology, but also do things safely and efficiently in the courtroom?
I think the courtrooms, and I think there are some counties in Florida that are trying this. They're rearranging the jury rooms. They're rearranging the courtrooms, certain courtrooms for trials, not all of them, because if they're foreseeing that this may continue another 6 months, perhaps a year, and they want to be ready. So I think jury trials can be done if the county spends the money rearranging the courtrooms and the jury rooms for that. And that's very important. We have a constitution in Florida, in the United States. And, you know, it was just the Texas Supreme Court just said the pandemic is no exception to our constitution. So in criminal law, everybody's entitled to see who's testifying against them and for the lawyer to ask questions of them, the right of confrontation. And that's sacred. So in criminal law, I don't think jury trials by video are the solution. I think we need to rearrange the courtrooms, the setups.
Thank you. Mr. Perry.
In dealing with the pandemic and dealing with face-to-face jury trials, you can utilize the current courtrooms. There are a number of courtrooms in Orange County Courthouse that have 14-person jury boxes. Most felony cases will require 6 jurors. Thus, you can deal with social distancing. In terms of jury selection, you would probably have to do that off-site, pick all juries off-site 1 week and have those return the following week, where they would go directly to the courtroom. You can enforce the social distancing in jury rooms and limit the number of public spots for a trial. Other than that, jury trials can go over. I concur with Mr. Williams. I think there are citizens who would be willing to come in and serve.
Ms. Worrell?
With regards to resolving cases by plea, we've been set up to resolve cases via video for a long time now. Not for everyone to appear via video, but often when individuals are at the jail, they can appear and see the judge through video. So it would just take some, I think, doing to set it up so that all counsel as well as the defendant can appear by video. Of course, defense counsel ensuring that their correspondence with their client is met, and state attorney doing the necessary conferences with their victim as well. In regard to jury trials, as a defense attorney, I feel very concerned about trying to do a virtual jury trial. There's some confrontation issues there that I think would be implicated. However, I recognize that if this doesn't get better at some point soon, we may not have an option, and we may have to take those things into consideration. I would, however, be concerned with requiring jurors to come in to the courthouse unless they, agree to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Barnes?
Thank you. The pandemic has really shown us a lot in terms of what we're capable of and what we're not capable of. And I think, the first couple of months of it were a little trying in terms of trying to do things remotely, but the links have improved. The effectiveness of doing things virtually has improved, which I think is good. And I think we need to carry that trend forward. In addition, I think virtual depositions are amazing. You can get so much more done doing virtual depositions. And I know that there's a lot of lawyers here on watching this. So I implore you, please do virtual depos. We can knock them out. It's great. We can prepare those cases. And I think that the pandemic is really showing us our capabilities. And we just need to continue with that. The state attorney's office, we have some limitations because, like, for example, criminal histories can't leave our building because we are CJIS certified. We have to keep them. So we need people in the office still, but I think we can do a lot of things from outside the office.
Mr. Williams?
So I'm going to first address Mr. Toriella's comment that we shouldn't believe public officials. I mean, he's running to be one of those public officials. So I think we should caution people about not believing public officials. And secondly, my experience with prosecutors is that they're hardworking individuals, public servants who want to make a difference in their community, and they're not taking this as a vacation. They're just trying to protect themselves. As far as I would second the comments of Judge Perry, Ms. Barra, and Ms. Worrell. I have 2 kids in school, and my wife and I are making a very difficult decision about what we're going to do about that. I do think there are jurors who will come in and serve. I do think that our Orange County and Osceola County courthouses can be fitted and distanced so that we can abide by CDC guidelines. However, there was a story in the New York Times that they did a trial in New York and an infection broke out, even though all those things were taken. There was another story that a trial went forward in California where it was successful. I don't think any of us can honestly say that we know when this is going to end. I think waiting until January or February to see if it's going to end is going to result in more delay. So I think we need to start to make preparations now for a more realistic view of what's going to happen.
Thank you all. As we talk a little bit about this election, due to laws in the state of Florida, this is going to be decided by voters in the Democratic Party. So there are 2 questions here. Do you see the office of Attorney General as partisan in nature? And then as a campaign, what do you say to Republican voters and also those who are no party affiliated? We will begin with Ms. Barra.
Yeah, I don't see why it's a partisan race. As state attorney, you need to follow the law. You're focused on the law. You implement laws. I don't really understand in roles like sheriff and state attorney what exactly the significance is of the Democrat versus Republican or independent. I know that this is obviously a closed primary. So Democrats will be voting in August and only Democrats, but then obviously we will be heading to November and everybody can vote in November. So there is, for this race, there isn't an opportunity for everybody to vote in it. I just don't see it as something that we should have a significant reason for having a D, an R, or an I next to our name. Thank you.
Ms. Worrell?
I think that people from each party would like to see someone who represents their ideologies, and that's why it would make sense that the Democrats would be able to have a candidate, Republicans would be able to have a candidate, and independents would also be able to have a candidate. Although the law is the law, regardless of what your party is, your ideology and the way that you would apply or impose the law may change based on that ideology. So I think that's the reason that it is the way it is. However, I agree that it could certainly be a nonpartisan seat as well, based on the fact that it is supposed to be very objective in nature. You said Attorney General. I'm assuming that you meant state attorney in the question. So with regards to the seat of the state attorney, that's the way that I view it. And again, in the general, everyone will have an opportunity to vote in this election.
Yes, Ms. Worrell, thank you for that clarification. We will continue. Mr. Torella.
I am the no party affiliation candidate in this race. I will be on the ballot on November 3rd, and I will be facing the candidate that prevails in the Democrat primary, August 18th. So I will not be in the ballot until November the 3rd in the general election. I believe it should be, the state attorney race should be nonpartisan, even though that's not the law, but I think it should be. That way people can run for what they represent and don't have to, some people are not necessarily Democrats, but they become Democrats because it's for their convenience. They think they may get more votes. And that's not good. I think people should run by who they are and what they believe. And the citizens should know that. You can look at my registration, voter registration. I've been no party affiliated. for the past 3 or 4 years. Previous to that, I've been both parties, but I got tired of both parties, so I became no party affiliation, and I'm staying no party affiliation. And I vote for the issues,
Thank
not
you,
the
Mr.
party.
Torella. Mr. Perry.
For 25 years, I served as a judge. I strongly believe in dealing with the legal system that it should be non-party affiliation. Too often, we have party affiliations trying to legislate either through the judicial branch or legislate, unfortunately, through the executive branch, through the state attorney's office. The law is the law, and we should not have your own personal ideology or personal spin or bent. I truly believe that this should be a nonpartisan type of race.
Mr. Williams.
So I've never had a victim or an accused individual ask me what party I belong to, and I never cared what party they belong to. I had a law professor in college who, when we asked him what he thought the characteristics of the best judges were and what their ideology was, he said it's the ones that didn't appear to have one because they're following the facts. And facts change in every circumstance, and you have to be willing to follow the law and the facts. And I think that's the role of the state attorney. I would push back a little bit on the idea of a nonpartisan race, because the reason we have parties, in my view, is because the electorate, it gives them something to hold on to as to what a person's belief is. A lot of people have difficulty, particularly in races like this one, identifying what the sort of least general values of a candidate for any office are, and a D or an R next to their name gives them some comfort. If the legislature changed it to a nonpartisan race, I think that would be perfectly appropriate. But I understand people who want to make it nonpartisan. You know, the problem with following the law in every situation is that you get hit from both sides, and that's the role of the state attorney, is to take those hits and to keep moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. So let's talk a little bit about what's just happening here in our community and in our country. You know, for weeks on end, we had protests happening right outside of the Orange County Courthouse down Orange Avenue there. If elected, where do you see your role as state attorney in mending what seems to be a very obvious wound in the Black community? We could begin with Mr. Perry. I don't believe we've begun with you yet.
The first thing that I've been advocating for years is not only dialogue, but a dialogue that have some goals and objectives and some things to accomplish. Yes, we have issues about police misconduct, but we also have issues about violent crimes in the Black community. We have issues about Black on Black crime. We have issues about the economics which cause those types of crimes. The conversation needs to start, and we need to have solutions to all three of those things I mentioned in that paradigm. Then and only then can our community be safe, and you can address the issues in the Black community, a community that I was raised in, and a community that I currently live in now. I don't have to do a drive-by. I live here.
Mr. Torella?
Well, I believe the issues that the Black community faces, other communities face too, like undocumented people from Mexico, undocumented people from other countries, citizens of other countries that are not yet U.S. citizens. Orlando is a multicultural city, and there's issues with police in every community. But let's turn things around. The people that the policemen deal with every day are not choir boys. They're not choir girls. 90% of Americans are never arrested for anything. And you can say perhaps 10% of the population is arrested. And they're not really the ones that are, saints. They're not choir boys, like I said. Many police officers get shot, get killed, but the media doesn't publish that. The media ignores that. Specifically to your question of the Black community, it's sad, our history of our country, it's sad, and how African American people were treated. But I think we're work in progress. We're getting better every day.
Mr. Terrell, I believe we've run out of time.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams.
So I disagree with Mr. Torrella's suggestion that the problems with policing and crime are the same in all neighborhoods. They're just not. I have never lived in an African-American, predominantly African-American community, but it doesn't take a genius to know and look at the statistics that if you're African-American, you're more likely to be arrested and you're more likely to be sentenced to prison for a longer amount of time if you're convicted of a crime. So while I don't have that direct experience, I am confident and I make myself aware of that situation every single day. As to how I would address it, I think it starts by listening and making sure that the community knows that you're listening, not talking, but listening. But the reality is the state attorney, I would have to get results. You know, I don't think people want to hear about talk anymore and hear about commissions and setting up panels to study things. I would be very focused on making sure that we get meaningful bail reform and a way to try to release more people pre-trial. I would be very focused on expanding the diversionary programs in the Ninth Circuit for minor offenses. And I'd be very focused on ensuring that we have transparency for use of force by law enforcement here in Central Florida.
Ms. Worrell.
As a member of the Black community, I don't presume to speak for or know what the thoughts or feelings of every member of the Black community is. And that's why I made it my business to go out and talk to people and hear from them and understand what their concerns were. And in doing that, one of the things that I learned was that there is a great distrust between the community and law enforcement including the state attorney's office. And that mistrust comes from what the community perceives to be cover-ups for law enforcement's brutality on the community. Another thing that I learned is that when people characterize crime as Black on Black crime, that is pejorative, and that Black on Black crime is no different than white on white crime or Hispanic on Hispanic crime. It's just crime. And that by categorizing it in that way, it's offensive and it's more of the problem. So how I will be effective is by listening to the community and then actually implementing policies that will directly address the needs of the community.
Thank you, Ms. Worrell. Ms. Barr?
Thank you. Mending the wound is going to take time and it's going to take action. And that action isn't just going to be just from the state attorney's office. You know, the state attorney's office is one partner in many partners that need to get on board with making real change. I think the biggest problem facing the state attorney's office is that people don't think that we are neutral. You know, people don't really understand our role, and it's about educating the community that we are a neutral party that is out to seek justice, and whatever justice is. And so there's no reason to farm out any cases from the state attorney's office in terms of police brutality or anything like that, because we are that agency. That we don't work for the police. They don't work for me. I get their cases, I review them, and if I see something that is wrong, I call them out. And I have successfully prosecuted police officers. I have charged police officers with crime. And that's what the community needs to know, is that you can come to the state attorney's office. We are here for you, and we are neutral, and we are fair, and we are just. And that's what I'm going to bring back to the state attorney's office.
Something else that's happening right now in this year, a lot of people have uncertainty with their jobs and whether or not they will be there. And so candidates, you would be the, let's see, 4th state attorney in the past 10 years. So the question is, if there are a lot of assistant state attorneys out there just concerned about having their jobs, if you're elected, how would you decide which employees to keep and who to let go? We'll begin with Mr. Torella.
Well, as a defense attorney, I can tell you that the actual prosecutors, the actual lawyers working are very good people, and they do the best they can, of course, with different levels of experience. The problem is the leadership. But the priority is to keep stability in the office. So if I was to be elected, I would not go in there and just replace everybody. No, I will work with the great attorneys that are there now and bring perhaps new attorneys that are also qualified and experienced. But the stability of the office is essential. And we do have good people. You know, they're there every day. They're decent people. And I have to give credit to Ms. Ayala, where credit is need to be given. She has diversified that office. And in the state attorney's office, we have people from all races. We have handicapped people. We have people, and she really has done a fabulous job on that. When I started in the state attorney's office, maybe perhaps there were 3 people that spoke Spanish.
Mr. Torello, you've run out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
So I've worked in the state attorney's office recently enough to know many of the experienced prosecutors. They would all stay. Frankly, I don't know that given the turnover in the office that the incoming state attorney can really afford to let go of a lot of people. I think it would be pretty unfair with younger, inexperienced people, attorneys and staff for that matter, to just start making cuts because of what someone told me or what someone believed their performance was. The individuals who are working there now would be working under different rules and different conditions and guidelines than what I would be asking them to do. So, I mean, if there are obvious exceptions to that, and I can think of maybe a couple out of 160 and 400 employees, I would address those. But for the most part, I would be very serious about giving everyone an opportunity to perform under what I believe will be different guidance.
Ms. Worrell?
Yeah, this is a question that I've actually had a lot just on the campaign trail. I don't have any intentions on getting rid of anyone. As far as management is concerned, I certainly intend to make sure that I have managers that embrace my philosophies and my ideologies and are able to manage down in accordance with those principles. However, we are, as has been stated, in a position where there has been much turnover. So I'm grateful for the employees that are there and that we have. And unless and until someone proves that they cannot come along with the ideologies and the policies that I'm trying to implement, then there's no reason for me to get rid of anyone. So that would be my thought process in going into the office.
Mr. Perry?
The key problem with the state attorney's office is not in determining who you're going to let go, but recruiting and retaining the people that you currently have. Of course, with any change in leadership, you will review your leadership team and assess whether or not that particular team still needs to be kept in place. So for the lion's share of all employees, be it assistant state attorneys, investigators, clerks, those individuals will remain there unless there's some reason for them not to remain. I will review and interview that leadership team that's still there to see whether or not they can fit and work within the parameters that I would set as state attorney.
Ms. Barra?
Thank you. So for the employees in the office, I just want you to know that it's not going to be a surprise. If anybody was let go in the office, you're not going to get randomly a letter in the mailbox that says you no longer have a job. That is not going to happen. If you're somebody who ultimately gets let go from the office, you're going to know why. You're going to know in advance. You're going to be given an opportunity to correct it. And if you don't correct it, then you would be let go, but it would be no surprise to anyone. Because the job of assistant state attorneys is very serious and important, and you have to do it well. If you're not doing the job of assistant state attorney well, then you are dangerous in the community. And we need people who get what it means to be a public servant. They get what it means to do the right thing at all costs. And I believe that the office is filled with people like that. If it ever comes a time where I see that that's not the case, then we're going to have these conversations and we're going to sit down and we're going to correct it. But there's not going to be any surprises.
Thank you, Ms. Barra. So candidates, if you were elected, what is the policy or change you would make first? The first thing that you would do as you take office? Let's begin with Mr. Williams.
The diversionary program. I would start with looking at the diversionary program and widening it and making it more available for lower level offenses. Not only do I think that's important in trying to reduce some of the levels of incarceration that are coming out of our community, but for the reasons that we discussed earlier about the need to make sure that we move cases during the middle of the pandemic, I think that's a ripe policy area to address. And to be more specific, I think we need to open up diversion to a wider range of cases and to a wider range of people. That means that we need to address and likely change the fact that if you've previously had diversion, that you're no longer eligible for diversion. And look at whether or not if you've got prior convictions of crimes that you wouldn't be eligible for diversion, particularly if those diversionary or if those prior crimes were aged. So that would be the first policy that I would tackle.
Ms. Worrell.
The first policy that I would implement would be geared towards changing the culture of prosecution. So ensuring that the assistant state attorneys know that their objectives have changed and that we're not focused only on punishment, but we're also focused on treatment, rehabilitation, and building stronger and safer communities. So I'll be changing the prosecutorial metrics so that we're no longer just focused on conviction rates, which has been a driving force among the state attorney's offices, but that we're focused on justice, rehabilitation, treatment, and the things that will actually make the community stronger and safer. I'll do this by implementing training programs that not only focus on implicit bias, but focus on the racial disparities and policies on how we can actually address those racial disparities in the criminal legal system, and focused on alternatives to incarceration.
Ms. Barra.
So the first thing I'm going to do is establish a government accountability unit to tackle and go after corrupt politicians in Central Florida. And probably my first day where I'm going to start recruiting people who have the skill sets in order to do that and to do that well. You know, right now the philosophy is if you're somebody who prosecutes, you know, armed carjacking or grand thefts or whatever, we'll put you in different roles and we rotate you throughout the office. And I want people that have a passion for economic crimes, because I think government corruption is all about following the money. And I know I can speak for myself. I would much rather prosecute a rapist than somebody who does a financial crime, because if you give me 4 boxes of bank records, I'm going to jump out the window. But there are people out there, God bless them, who get excited about that. And we need to bring them to the office and we need to put them in a position so that they can follow the money so that we can end and attack the corruption that is happening in our community.
Mr. Perry.
The first thing I would do would have a comprehensive review of all policies and procedures. You have to know what current policies and procedures currently are to tweak those and then implement the policies and procedures that you're going to bring with you. It's hard to effect change when you don't open the hood up and see the components of the engine.
Mr. Torella.
I agree with former Judge Belvin Perry. You need to open the hood and see what the current policies and procedures are. And you may keep some or change some of them, but very specifically, I would probably get rid of pretrial diversion for felony cases and offer diversion cases only in misdemeanor cases, with the exception of DUIs. I don't think there should be diversion offered for first-time DUI offenders. Because when you get in the car and you're drunk, you can kill somebody, you can kill a family. And why I don't want diversion for felonies? Because, you know, people take theft lightly, they take fraud lightly, they take drugs lightly. Drugs are not light, and there's nothing light about drugs or fraud. Let me give you an example. I believe in helping people with addictions. We have drug court, okay? And the courts would help people deal with addictions. But when the person that is addicted starts robbing people, shooting people, breaking into homes, stealing cars, then that's more than an addiction. So I would get rid of
Sure.
diversion for felony cases and for DUIs.
Thank you.
And as to theft and fraud, you know, everybody
Oh,
takes theft.
You've run out of time, Mr. Torella.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have member questions. I see Nick and LaShonda.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. For those of you, we have been monitoring the comments for questions. Some of you may actually think some of your questions have been answered, is because we try to pick questions that we thought you might want to hear the answer to. So some of those questions were asked. What I'll do is I'll ask, I think, a question that we didn't come up with. And then also I will bring up a couple of issues that were brought up in the chats that the individual candidates may want to address during their closing remarks. But the question is, the juvenile justice system is the greatest facilitator of the school to prison pipeline. What will each of you do to reduce recidivism in the juvenile court and end the funnel of children into prisons? And Jasmine, I'll to you to who's next.
Gotcha. Okay. Ms. Barra.
So I believe in civil citations. I think that those are great tools for law enforcement. I don't think juveniles, if they're committing offenses that, 20 years ago would wind them up in detention. I think we can all remember a time where, 2 people were fighting by the flagpole and everybody ran out, and then the assistant principal came and broke it up, and yeah, they got detention, maybe they got suspended. Now they're getting criminal records or at least arrested, and that's ridiculous. We need to do away with that. However, on the other end of that, juveniles are committing more violent crimes than I think in any time in our history. And so if somebody, shoots somebody in the back of the head and they're 17 years old, they're going to prison. And I believe in that. So it's really about evaluating case by case and what is justice within those facts.
Mr. Perry?
Our juvenile justice system is currently constituted is a failure. We need to rework the entire juvenile justice system to provide preventative programs to stop crimes before they occur. We also need to be able to deal with juveniles, as Ms. Barrett said, that are extremely violent. But it's going to take a comprehensive new approach to deal with juveniles. The juveniles of the past are not the juveniles of the day. And most of the programs that we have, frankly, just don't work.
Mr. Williams?
I agree with both Ms. Barra and Judge Perry's comments about the juvenile justice system. If you look at the literature on the school to prison pipeline, it's pretty clear that a lot of it started when we started putting law enforcement officers in schools. There are good reasons to have law enforcement officers in schools, and our state, unfortunately, has some very public examples of why that is necessary. But we cannot continue to criminalize behavior that is that in the past would not have been criminal, as Ms. Barra alluded to. So as a concrete matter, I think that the state attorney needs to work very diligently with the agencies that are staffing those schools to make sure that there's clear guidance as to what should be arrestable and what is not. And most of it, the overwhelming majority of it, should not be arrested. We don't need to see 6-year-olds in handcuffs. We need to make greater use of civil citations going forward. And I also agree that while I would use direct file sparingly, that is charging a juvenile as an adult, and I would personally sign off on any such decision as state attorney, I don't think we can completely take it off the table because there are.
Mr. Torella?
Yes, I believe it is. That's what the law says ideally about the juvenile system. It's there to rehabilitate, and I do believe in rehabilitating young men and young ladies that commit nonviolent crimes. I believe diversion is appropriate for juvenile cases that are nonviolent. On the other hand, violent crimes done by juveniles should be treated accordingly, particularly if you're over 16 years of age. There's an issue, and I know this being a defense attorney, former Judge Perry is probably familiar with it too. There's criminal organizations that recruit juveniles. So they commit the street crimes and do the crimes because they know they're gonna get away with it and nothing happens with it. And that's why after a certain age, 17, 16, if you do a violent crime, you should be treated accordingly and perhaps treated as an adult. However, for the majority of the crimes committed by juvies, they need to be rehabilitated and diversion would be appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Terrell. And Ms. Worrell.
Thank you. Calling a child an adult for the purpose of prosecution does not make it true. Now, we can choose to ignore research and data, or we can pay attention to it and understand that the brain does not completely develop until a person is the age of 25. So saying that you're going to hold someone accountable for something that they cannot fully appreciate the nature and consequences of their actions is just choosing to ignore the facts. Now, as I mentioned, I'm a member of this community. I want to be safe. I want my family to be safe. So I'm not advocating for us ignoring violent crime just because they're committed by children. But what we've seen by having law enforcement officers in schools is an increase as what we refer to as the school to prison pipeline. In addition to that, that increase is notorious in minority communities. So in order for us to fix that, we have to recognize what the facts are and we have to address them appropriately. I don't believe that children should be involved in the criminal justice system for childhood behavior, and for individuals who commit violent offenses, we have to find a way to appropriately address those issues.
Thank you. I see there are more questions, but I know we also are running up on that 1 o'clock time frame. So you guys just let me know where we want to go.
Okay, Jasmine, so I have an idea. And again, this last, your pretty much your elevator pitch, your last, you're going to ask you to talk about you and your campaign, but just to give you an idea of some of the questions or topics that have come up in the questioning that you may or may not want to address include following the law with regard to issues like the death penalty. There's a question about whether or not a particular candidate is taking a step back by trying to be a state attorney now. There are questions about management skills and experience. So I'll give you that. Those are some of the questions that the members are asking. And then due to time limitations, I think we're going to have to reduce your last minute comments to 1.5 minutes.
Nope.
And I'll take it back to Jasmine to decide who goes first.
So y'all have extra topics to discuss and you've got 30 seconds less with which to do it. Good luck, candidates.
We'll begin with Mr. Perry.
You have a pivotal decision to make on the 18th day of August. Do you want to elect a state attorney that will keep your community safe from career criminals, gang violence, tourist-related crimes, human trafficking, and a state attorney that will protect the innocent and make sure that crime and punishment is fairly and equally placed out there? My record clearly indicates that I've done that, despite what other people may say. If you look at your community leaders, people who live and work in this community, not people from the outside, but people who have long-standing reputations, they have all endorsed my candidacy. So if you believe in the same thing that I believed in for all the time that I've represented this great community, then I ask that you vote for me, the person with the experience, the knowledge, and the background to keep this community safe. Thank you.
Ms. Barr?
Thank you. The role of the state attorney, if done correctly, is complex. It's a combination of things, and you can't be a one-issue candidate. You have to be well-versed in a lot of things to do it well. You have to be a trial attorney. You have to be a prosecutor. You have to, your job is to do justice and to run an office. And so in terms of doing justice, I've been a prosecutor for 17 years. You know, I've prosecuted every type of case. I've prosecuted politicians successfully. I've prosecuted police officers successfully. I received the first life sentence in the state of Florida for a person who was sex trafficking a juvenile. I know how to prosecute a case. And to lead prosecutors, that's important. But in addition to that, you have to run an office. Our office has a budget of over $26 million. We have over 400 employees. And for 17 years, I've been learning how the office operates and how it works. And that's significant because when I take office in January, I don't have a learning curve. I don't have to spend my first 6 months trying to figure out how to turn the lights on. I know how to do it. And I can get to work right away because I know how the system works. I know what we do and I know what we're doing wrong. And I know how to fix it. I just need the opportunity to get in there and implement my thoughts, my positions. And that's what I'm asking your help for me to do that. We need to make change. We need to hold people accountable. We need to give people breaks when they need it and deserve it. Vote for me on or before August 18th. Thank you all so much for listening.
Ms. Worrell.
I love this community. I love Orange County. I love Osceola County. My kids were born here. They were raised here. I made this my home for the last 32 years. I'm 63 years old. I've been tested by life. I've been practicing criminal law exclusively for 31 years, 3 as a state attorney, 28 as a defense attorney. And we need to turn around the direction our criminal justice system is going, primarily due because of the state attorney's office. So I am in this race for the community. If elected, I would try to be in office 2 terms so I can get the office going back in the right direction. So I can later on, 8 years from now, be replaced by somebody that will continue my legacy. We live in it's pivotal, it's essential. We cannot let Orlando go. I don't have any sugar daddies. I don't have anybody backing me up. You know, most elected officials in Orange County have been in power for 25 years. They play musical chairs. I also be looking at political crimes. It's the same people that change offices from one to the other. And for the past 25 years, nobody does anything. You know, the Orlando Sentinel talks about the airport. They talk about me spending at UCF. Big news. But what happens? What happens in the airport? I'm always curious what happens in the airport. We just get the first news, but we don't know we don't get any follow-up. So, you know, yes, government accountability unit is essential.
Thank you, Mr. Torella.
Thank you.
Ms. Worrell.
Thank you. I've been practicing in this community for more than 20 years, and this is a very important election because we have to determine as a community whether or not we would like to make progress in our criminal legal system, or if we want it to stay the same or even worse, move backwards. And I believe that the reason that this election is of national importance is because in this state, we incarcerate our citizens at a rate higher than the national average. So it would behoove us to look around the country and see what can we do differently and what can we do better so that we can be less incarcerative as a state. Now, with regards to prosecuting, well, we do that. We even here in the Ninth Circuit prosecute and incarcerate individuals at a very high level. So the thing that I believe we need to focus on right now is how can we keep the community safe and incarcerate less, because incarceration does not by itself keep the community safe. In fact, many individuals return to our community within 3 to 5 years. And if we send non-violent individuals to prison, they will come home violent as a result of the violent atmosphere that is prison. So I am the only candidate in this race who has been focused on criminal justice reform for my entire career. So I am the only candidate in this race who knows how to implement policies that will actually bring us to reform. So if we want to change, we have to be the change. If we want something different, we have to do something different. And I believe it's time for a fresh perspective on justice.
Thank you, Ms. Worrell. Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Well, since many of you know all of us and what we have and have not done, rather than give you an elevator speech, I'm going to use my time to bring a disturbing fact to your attention and implore you to fulfill a responsibility that I believe each of you hold. Earlier this week, the American Civil Liberties Union sent out a mailer purporting to describe each of the candidates' positions on some key criminal justice reform issues. And one of the bolded issues was, quote, cut off the school to prison pipeline, which we talked about here today. Despite providing virtually identical answers, the ACLU informed thousands of Ninth Circuit voters that one candidate's answer was yes, and that my answer was no. We have transcripts from the forum the ACLU hosted, and we have the written responses, and we're going to provide them online. And the answers are indistinguishable. This ad is so misleading and mischaracterizes my response so badly that members of the local chapter of the ACLU who organized the debate and know us all wrote a statement saying that the mailer was inaccurate. Now, I want to be clear that I'm not blaming any of the candidates for what the ACLU did. But the fact remains that an organization comprised of people outside of this community was willing to grossly misrepresent and lie about not just my position, but some of the other candidates as well, to benefit their candidate of choice. And it's further worth noting that this is not the first group to spend thousands of dollars to spread factually inaccurate smears about one of us in just the last week. As leaders of this community, I challenge every one of you watching who knows myself and the other candidates to tell everyone who will listen and ask for your informed advice the truth about us. Text them, email, and call them, regardless of who you decide to support, so that a person worthy of holding this office will take the oath in January to support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the state of Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. And that is our time. We've actually run a little bit over, but we appreciate everybody, everyone coming and participating today. And I'm going to send things back over to LaShonda.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Some of you guys may have even seen when some of the candidates were talking. I hope it wasn't distracting. I've got 2 iPads, an iPhone, and an individual here helping me filter questions and comments. And when I smiled earlier, I just want to say thank you to Jasmine Bailey. You've been getting fan mail on my text and my emails as this is gone. There are people out there who love you, say you did an awesome job, and we want to thank you on behalf of the Orange County Bar Association and Tiger Bay for your time today. And I'll let Nick give us our last words before we adjourn.
Excellent. Thank you so much, LaShonda. Jasmine Bailey, you were a fantastic moderator. Thank you so much for coming out and helping us all. To the candidates, thank you all for your civic engagement. The fact that so many wonderful and qualified candidates are willing to step up on a race like that. This is very meaningful to us, to the members of Tiger Bay, to the members of Orange County Bar Association. So thank you for your service and your willingness to do the work that is ahead. I remind everyone, if you haven't already made your plans to vote by mail, to get engaged for early voting, or to vote in person at your polling location, the time is upon us. Get out there and vote. Thank you all for listening. And with that, on behalf of the Orange County Bar Association in Tiger Bay, I'm Nick Shaneen, over and out. Thank you all.